Alright guys, so we've been asked to find the slope of a tangent line at a given point for the equation r equals 4 cosine theta at the point 2 comma pi by 3. Now, this equation here is f of theta. And our point that we've been given is r comma theta. So this is r, or another way to say this would be f of theta equals 2 and theta equals pi by 3. Okay? F of theta equals 2 and theta equals pi by 3. Okay? So we've been asked to find this. Now, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to get the papers arranged here. We want to find the slope of the tangent line. What is the slope of the tangent line? It is the derivative of the function when that point has been plugged in. So what I need to find is I need to find dy dx. Now, why not find just f prime of theta? And the answer to that is that dy dx is the slope of the tangent line. Remember, the tangent line is a rectangular thing. Okay, so we're going to find dy dx. Now, to find dy dx, I'm going to come over here. I've got f of theta is 4 cosine theta. Somewhere on my paper, I want to find f prime of theta. Okay, so f prime of theta, which is the derivative of 4 cosine theta. Well, the derivative of 4 cosine theta is going to be negative 4 sine theta. And I'm going to write that down because that might come in handy. Now, dy dx, we've got a formula for that, and it says f prime of theta times the sine of theta plus f of theta cosine theta over f prime of theta cosine theta minus f of theta sine theta. Okay, so that is the formula, and that is from video number 1. We derived dy dx. So that's going to be f prime of theta times sine of theta is going to be this f prime, so negative 4 sine theta times sine theta plus f of theta, which will be 4 cosine theta, times cosine theta over, and it's going to be f prime times cosine, so it's going to be negative 4 sine times cosine minus f of theta, 4 cosine theta, times sine of theta. So something like that. Okay? Fun. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take this. Okay, so here it is. We're gonna try and simplify this a little bit. And what will this be? This will be 4 cosine squared. Okay, 4 cosine squared minus 4 sine squared over, and this will be what? Negative 4 sine cosine minus 4 sine cosine. Well, negative 4 sine cosine minus 4 sine cosine is going to be what? It's going to be negative 8 sine theta cosine theta, right? So it's going to be 4 apples minus, well, negative 4 minus 4, so negative 8, right? Now, this would be dy dx in what's called its general form. Dy dx in what's called its general form. But they gave me a point to plug in. They gave me a point to plug in. And that point to plug in is 2 comma pi by 3. So what I'm going to do, remember, f of theta is 2, okay? And theta is pi by 3, okay? So I want to show you this in case someone ever asks you to find dy dx in its general form. That is dy, so that there, put a box around, that is dy dx. Now, but we want to find the slope of the tangent line. The slope of the tangent line is actually going to be to take this equation right here and plug in f of theta equals 2 and theta equals pi by 3. Okay, so f of theta is 2. So I'm going to take this equation here. I'm going to come down here. F of theta is 2. So if I take this fraction, f of theta is 2 cosine of pi by 3. That's going to be f of theta cosine theta. And this will be f of theta, 2, times sine of theta, which will be sine of pi by 3. Okay? And then this side, f prime of theta is negative 4 sine theta. So this will be negative 4 sine of pi by 3 times sine of pi by 3. Or you could have saved yourself some trouble and did sine squared of pi by 3. And then this will be f prime of theta will be negative 4 sine of pi by 3 times cosine of pi by 3. Okay? For this particular general case, for this specific case, we're going to plug in pi by 3, and for f of theta, we're going to plug in 2, which is equal to r. Okay? So now what do we get? All right, we've got to plug in these numbers and see what we get. Okay? Well, this is going to be negative 4 times the sine of pi by 3, right? And I'm a degree person, so when I think of pi by 3, my brain says the sine of 60 degrees. The sine of 60 degrees is root 3 by 2. So I'm going to get root 3 by 2, root 3 by 2, plus 2 times, and cosine of pi by 3 will be 1/2. Okay, so that'll be 1/2 over negative 4 times, and I get root 3 by 2, and then here cosine of pi by 3 is 1/2, and then minus 2 times the sine of pi by 3, which is root 3 by 2. So a lot of this is going to simplify. Of course, this will be a 1. This will just be a root 3. Okay. Those 2's and that 4 go away. Those 2's and that 4 go away. We get a whole lot of really pretty stuff. So this is root 3 times root 3 is 3, but it's negative 3. So that gives me negative 3 plus 1 on top. And then on the bottom, I get root 3 times 1, so it'd be negative root 3. And then here, minus root 3, okay? So that gives me something like negative 3 plus 1 over negative 2 root 3, okay? Negative 2 root 3. Now, of course, what happens there, negative 3 plus 1 is negative 2, and negative 2 and negative 2 cancel, and so I get 1 over root 3. So this is going to equal 1 over root 3, or root 3 by 3. So the slope of the tangent line at that point is root 3 by 3. Okay? So that's how we find both the general derivative here and the slope of the tangent line by plugging in f of theta is 2 and theta is pi by 3 here. Remember, the slope of the tangent line will always be a point. It will always be a point. Root 3 by 3 is our case here. Okay? So our second question is very, very similar. We are given r equals 4 plus sine theta. R equals 4 plus sine theta. Please remember, this is f of theta. Okay, this is f of theta. This is also f of theta. Okay, and then this is theta. Okay, so we have been asked to find the slope of the tangent line for 4 plus sine theta at the point 3 comma 3 pi by 2. Now we're not going to find the general derivative this time. We're going to take this formula and plug this point in. So we're going to do this a little easier and a little faster this time. So dy dx is equal to, and I'm going to say f prime of theta sine theta, I'm getting ahead of myself, plus f of theta cosine theta over f prime of theta cosine theta minus f of theta sine theta. And what's going to happen is we're going to plug in, everywhere we have f of theta, we're going to plug in a 3. Everywhere we have f prime of theta, well, I don't know what f prime of theta is. Let's find f prime of theta. What is the derivative of 4 plus sine theta? The derivative of 4 plus sine theta, that's going to be a 0, and then that's going to be a cosine theta. So it's just going to be cosine theta. F prime of theta will be cosine theta. So everywhere we have f theta, we're going to plug in that. Everywhere we have f prime of theta, we're going to plug in that. And everywhere we have a theta, we're going to plug in 3 pi by 2. Or 270 degrees if you're a degree person. So what does dy dx give us? Well, that gives us cosine of 3 pi by 2 times sine of 3 pi by 2 plus 3 times cosine 3 pi by 2 over, right? So over here, f prime will be cosine of 3 pi by 2 times cosine of 3 pi by 2 minus, and then f of theta will just be 3. So it'll be 3 sine of 3 pi by 2. Now, let's plug in our numbers. What is the cosine of 3 pi by 2? Well, the cosine of 3 pi by 2, or the cosine of 270, is going to be 0. And 0 times anything is 0. So that whole thing is 0. And then up here, we also get a 0. Down here, we also get a 0. So we get a whole bunch of zeros. We get a whole bunch of zeros here. What does that leave me with? Well, the only thing left, by the way, just for fun, 0 times anything is 0. 0 times anything is 0. This is a 0. Just for fun, the sine of 3 pi by 2 is negative 1. Okay, so this is negative 1, and negative 3 times negative 1 is positive 3, so I end up with 0 over 3. Well, what's the slope of the tangent line? It's just 0. What does that mean to us? That means we have a horizontal tangent line. Okay? So, something you might want to keep up with. This is a horizontal tangent line. Okay? It's a horizontal tangent line. All right, cool. One more, number 3 here. I have got r equals 2 sine of 3 theta. And they want us to find the slope of the tangent line at all leaf tips. Now, the first thing you have to know is, what does this graph look like? If you don't know what this graph looks like, you cannot even begin to picture this. And so here goes. So I'm going to show you this picture real quick. So we've got our XY coordinate going to be something like that. So this is X and this is Y. And anytime you have a sine graph of a rose curve, you're going to have a leaf lying on the y-axis. And since this is 3, we're going to have 3 leaves. And so what this is going to look like is it's going to have a leaf here on the negative y-axis. And it's going to have a leaf that comes out here. And it's going to have a leaf that comes out here. And these are going to be exactly symmetric. And so we know this leaf tip is at theta equals 3 pi by 2. Okay, and again, if you think in degrees, that would be 270 degrees. Okay, now what's going to happen is this and this are actually going to cut our quadrant into thirds. Okay, thirds. So that's going to be 120 degrees. Okay, 120 degrees. If you're a degree person, or it is going to be 2 pi by 6. 2 pi by 6, or 2 pi by 3. 2 pi by 3. So from here to here has to be 2 pi by 3, and from here to here has to be 2 pi by 3, and then from here to here has to be 2 pi by 3, and that whole thing adds up to 2 pi. Okay, so cuts our unit circle into thirds. So if I take 2 pi by 3 and I go to here, that's going to be 0. Okay, so that's going to be 0. And then we go a little bit further, and what you'll find is this is going to be at pi by 6. Okay, so this leaf tip will be at pi by 6. This leaf tip will be at 2 pi by 3. Or 3 pi by 2. Dyslexia there. And this leaf tip, if we go from pi by 6 and we add 2 pi by 3, we get 5 pi by 6. So this third leaf tip will be at 5 pi by 6. Okay? So that's the first thing you got to know. You got to know your 3 points. These are our 3 theta values. Okay? So I'm going to call them theta 1, theta 2, and theta 3. Theta 1, theta 2, theta 3. Those are going to be, and I'm cutting off my writing here. I didn't see that I was off camera there. Those will be my 3 theta values. Okay, so that's the first step. Now, the other thing I need to do is I need to find f prime of theta. I'm going to go ahead and write that on my paper as well. So if r is 2 sine 3 theta, we've got to find f prime of theta. F prime of theta is going to be using the chain rule. So it's going to be 2 times the derivative of sine 3 theta, which is going to be cosine 3 theta times 3, right? That's our good old chain rule. So this is going to be the derivative of sine of u is going to be cosine u times u prime. U prime, going to be that inner derivative. So that gives me what? F prime of theta is equal to 6 cosine 3 theta. So I need to know that. That's the first thing I need to know. The second thing I need to know is this is going to be f of theta. All right, it's going to be that. Okay, it's going to be that. Or the other thing to remember is this is going to have a radius of 2. So this will be a radius of 2. This will be a radius of 2. This will be a radius of 2. So f of theta at these points is equal to 2. So that's important. F of theta is equal to 2. So I've got f of theta, I've got f prime of theta, and I've got theta. So what do? I plug those things into my equation. So I'm going to do the first one, and then I'll do the next two fairly quickly. So if I take dy dx is equal to, and I'll write my equation out one time, and I'm going to use it 3 times, it'll be f prime of theta sine of theta plus f of theta cosine of theta over f prime of theta cosine of theta minus f of theta sine of theta. Now for theta 1, which was equal to pi by 6, here's what we get. We take f prime of theta, is going to be this equation here. Okay, so scoot this up just a little. So theta, f prime of theta will be 6 cosine 3 theta. So it'll be 6 cosine of 3 pi by 6. So 3 times pi by 6 times sine of theta, which is pi by 6, plus f of theta, which in our case is just 2 cosine of pi by 6, over, and this will be 6 cosine, helps if I copy right, it's f prime theta, f prime of theta, 6 cosine of 3 theta, times cosine of theta, minus 2 sine of theta. Okay? So this will be for theta 1. For theta 1. Now what? Now I just need to simplify this fraction. So scoot over just a little bit here. See if I can squeeze all this in. So cosine of 3 pi by 6, that's pi by 2. That's 90 degrees. Well, that's going to be cosine of 90 degrees is 0. So this whole quantity becomes 0, and this whole quantity becomes 0. Okay? So what that leaves me with is just this piece of the fraction here. Okay? That's going to give me 2 times the cosine of pi by 6, or the cosine of 30 degrees, which is root 3 by 2, over negative 2 times the sine of pi by 6, or the sine of 30 degrees, which is 1/2. Well, those 2's go away, and those 2 goes away, and I get root 3 over negative 1, which is negative root 3. Negative root 3. Okay, so for theta 1, so for theta equals pi by 6, this is the slope of the tangent line. M equals negative root 3. Okay, now what? We do the same thing for theta 2. Theta 2 was 5 pi by 6, and we're going to do that same thing over again. What's the equation going to look like? Well, I'm literally going to copy this fraction. It's literally going to be 6 cosine. Instead of 3 pi by 6, it's going to be 3 times that, which will be 15 pi by 6. That's a lot. Times the sine of 5 pi by 6 plus 2 cosine 5 pi by 6 over 6 cosine 15 pi by 6 times cosine of 5 pi by 6 minus 2 sine 5 pi by 6. Okay, now 15 pi by 6, well, 6 pi by 6 is 1 pi, 12 pi by 6 is 2 pi, and then another 3 pi by 6, that's 2.5 pi. Okay, if you reduce this fraction, it's 2.5 pi. Well, 2 pi is a full trip around the unit circle, and another half pi is going to be straight up. It's going to be 90 degrees, and this is going to be 0. This is going to be 0. 0 times anything gives us 0. So again, we're just left with this piece of the fraction. So we get 2 times, what is the cosine of 5 pi by 6? Well, it's the same as the cosine of pi by 6, except we're in quadrant 2, so it's going to be negative root 3 by 2. And this will be negative 2 times, and the sine of 5 pi by 6 will be positive 1/2. And so again, the 2's cancel, and this time we get negative root 3 over negative 1, which gives us positive root 3. So when theta is 5 pi by 6, then m equals root 3. Okay, so our slope of our tangent line is positive root 3. And I want you to go back to my drawing for a second. This tangent line, right, and this tangent line, if we look, this should be a negative slope, right? It should go, if it tangent to that point, should be a negative slope. Tangent to this line should be a positive slope. And since there's a symmetry to these two, we see that that actually makes a lot of sense. Our answers make a lot of sense. So that's kind of cool. All right. Now, if you look at it that way, the tangent line here, what should the slope be? Should be a horizontal line. This tangent line at theta 3 should be 0. Well, let's find out if that's true. So theta 3 is equal to 3 pi by 2. And we're going to plug in our numbers again. So we're going to say 6 cosine of, and again, it's going to be what? It's going to be 3 theta. So 3 times 3 pi by 2 is 9 pi by 2. 9 pi by 2 times the sine of 3 pi by 2 plus 2 cosine 3 pi by 2 over, and in this case it's going to be what? 6 cosine 9 pi by 2 times cosine 3 pi by 2 minus 2, and this time it'll be sine 3 pi by 2. And again, this falls on a vertical axis, so it's 0. That is 0. And actually that one's 0 too. And so again, this whole quantity here becomes 0. We're left with just this piece here, except this time cosine of 3 pi by 2 is also 0. So what do we get? We get m equals 0 when theta is equal to 3 pi by 2. Well, we already said that actually makes sense. That should be a horizontal tangent line. Okay, so anyway, that's how we find the slopes of tangent lines. It's kind of a neat little thing. I think it really does help if you have the graph in front of you, especially if you're doing it for every leaf. And so do know that if you have one with 3 leaves, you're going to have to do 3 separate problems. So I hope this helps. Let me know if you have any questions.